My name is Aaron Edwards with Santos Springs. Today is November 7th, 2025, and welcome to this week's edition of the Friday Field Report, South America. We have a lot to go over: planting in Brazil, weather forecasts. We're going to talk a little bit about the competitiveness of South America, specifically Brazil versus the US, with this whole big headline of trade coming out. We'll talk about that a little bit later. But first, let's just jump in. Let's just kind of get an overview of what's going on with crops, what's going on with weather, focused specifically on soybeans and specifically on Brazil. And I'll tell you why that specific focus. For now, let me grab a marker so I can mark this up well. Let's see what color would stand out. Let's try black here. Okay. So what we're looking at here, these 12 states, you don't need to worry about your Portuguese. I got you covered there. These 12 states represent 96% of Brazil's soybean acreage. And down here at the bottom, we have 54.7% is the historic 5-year average. I got a little messy. Let's improve that. Historic 5-year average. And as of 1st of November, we were at 47%. We'll get the updated numbers next Monday. I expect we'll still be behind on Brazil planting. But in case you missed it last week, the big number that I watch for as far as planting delays is rounded numbers, 30% planted by the end of October to give Brazilian farmers the optimal window for double crop corn. Because the actual soybean planting window is pretty big. You can plant great soybeans all the way into November. Rio Grande do Sul, and the southern tip, only starts in November. Some of that northeast expansion area only plants in November. So the delays to planting maybe aren't as concerning, but if you don't have enough planted to get in double crop corn, that's an issue. But that's not. They got over the double crop corn hurdle in time. So the double crop corn window is still as expected. Not a bullish story on double crop corn just yet. There could still be, but that's going to be once we start planting it. They played a little bit of catch up, but I think they trimmed off about 1 percentage point last week. I expect there will be a little bit more catching up done. Rains are coming. We'll talk about weather in just a minute, but it's spotty. It's very hot, summer, windy, and kind of just-in-time rains, just enough rains, and they're spotty. So some areas, basically what I'm saying is you could see pictures of anything that you want to see pictures of coming out of Brazil, because some areas have gotten Goldilocks rain, planted on time. They look absolutely beautiful. Other areas are struggling, can't get in time, planting in the dust, not sure what's going on. So there's kind of a lot going on there. Just to understand the spottiness of the rain, let's actually look. So this is actual rainfall over the last 7 days. And then the next one we're going to look is forecasted rainfall. The best way to describe rainfall is just spotty. Let's get to yellow up here. This state here let me see if I can get a color that stands out more, maybe red. This state here is Mato Grosso. That a third of all of Brazil's production is in that state. That state alone, if it were its own country, it would be the third largest soybean producer in the world. I mean, it's amazing. And there's spots of dryness, generally okay rain, but not a lot of rain, and it's coming off the dry. Very worrisome region up here is that northeast expansion area. Very spotty rain. The reason it's not more alarming is because that is one of those areas that plants a little bit later. So they're not really out of their window yet. All right, spotty rains, but not out of the planting window. And then you see there's it's rains are on the light side and they're spotty and it's concerning. So the natural question is, will there be enough rainfall? Maybe it got some work, and that's where hasn't happened yet, but basically everywhere except for this northeastern expansion area. grab the marker again here. Everywhere except for that northeastern expansion area is pretty much okay. That's the one exception. And so, is it possible there will be yield reduction? Yes. Is it possible there will be acreage reduction? I would be surprised. And I'm still there's definitely not any yield loss yet, in my opinion. Even if they had to replant, which I've not heard any cases of replant, even if you would have to replant, I still don't expect, we haven't lost any potential out of the Brazilian soybean crop yet. What has been the bigger headline, and that's kind of what I wanted to spend a little bit of time talking about, is kind of the market side of it. All right. So I hope you're enjoying the Friday Field Report. If you are a farmer, we do offer premium services. That's what pays the bill, with consulting, helping you navigate markets. So if you're looking for that type of help, in the email that you got this link, you can just look at my calendar, pick a time that works for you, and we can talk about that. But I wanted to talk a little bit about the premiums, or really basis. If you think of the export market out of Brazil versus the export market in the US, so which one is competitive? And really what we've seen with the trade deal announcement, we have seen Chicago go up, and then we have seen a slight improvement in US basis or export premiums. But that's normal in the US seasonally coming out of harvest. So is that improvement because of the trade deal, or is it just the seasonal improvement that we typically see on the back end of harvest? Less clear. What's very clear is what's happened to the premiums in Brazil. And almost an exact measure, as Chicago has gone up, their export premiums have gone down. So Chicago went up, and then their basis effectively went down in practically the same proportion. The reason that, in my opinion, that is very important is because you need to understand how the price of soybeans in Brazil is priced and how Brazilian farmers interact with that market to understand how competitive it is, or what's the level of export intensity that we could see out of Brazil. So here's just, again, if you really want help navigating markets, reach out, let's go over it. But I just want to briefly explain the conversations that I've been having with our customers in Brazil over the last 2 weeks about how to navigate this market and what the implications are for farmers down there, and how it could impact farmers here. So it's going to be a little bit of just a pricing lesson. Maybe this is a review for you, but this is the conversations that I've been having with farmers in Brazil as they navigate this. And there's pretty significant impacts to how the competitiveness of Brazilian soybeans once their harvest comes, in my opinion. So let me lay it out. First thing is, how is a bushel of soybeans, or down there they do 60 kilogram sacks, how is that priced? Or call it a metric ton if you want. There's three components. They have the Chicago Board of Trade price, plus or minus the basis effectively, but they call it the premium because the premium is at the port, and then they back out the logistics. So they actually do those two components separately. And then the third one is their exchange rate. So what have we seen? The Brazilian exchange rate is very weak, which means their price, the dollar, the exchange rate is low, which means the dollar is relatively weak to their Brazilian currency compared to what it was last year. Just to put some numbers on it, where the exchange rate is about 5.5 now. Last December, it got up to 6.30. It tapped 6.30. So at a 6.30 exchange rate, that's $6 reals and 30 cents for $1. And now it's closer to 5.5. So if you can export, let's just rounded numbers, right? If you export a bushel of beans at $10 at a 6.3 exchange rate, you're talking 63 reais per bushel. That same $10 export at a 5.5 would be 55, right? Just to put some numbers to it. That's not how they measure it, but just to do some quick math. So the price is a lot lower because of the exchange rate. That has nothing to do with fundamentals of supply and demand. That has to do with the Brazilian economy, has to do with the weakening dollar that we've seen over the last, basically January through the middle of the year. We had a big slide in the value of the US dollar. That's what that's related to, not necessarily related to corn and soybeans. That's the first component. We know we got a pop in Chicago, okay, but that was compensated with their premiums or their basis just absolutely getting destroyed, basically in the same measure. So the reason I want to point this out is, as we approach harvest, most farmers in Brazil are undersold because they haven't had a price that is profitable to them. Part of the reason is because they haven't had an exchange rate that is profitable to them, but also everybody knows how sideways and pressure the soybean market has been. There's been opportunities that are few and far between and not too exciting. You throw a bad exchange rate on top of that, it's very much that case. And the basis opportunities or the premium opportunities there was a little bit back in the spring and then a little bit in August. So some people got a little bit of that booked, but the lion's share did not. As we approach harvest, mainly February and March, so we got a little bit of time, they're planting now. What could happen? Number one, basis is typically, or the premiums are typically pressured. Harvest basis is low in the US, and the US can store 60% of production on farm. Brazil can store 10 to 15%. So at basis, when you got harvest, the bottom really falls out of basis typically. So basis is probably going to be pressured to move those soybeans out. Maybe this year's different. The board of trade price, we don't know. We'll talk about that last. But will the exchange continue at this low rate, or will we gradually see that Brazilian exchange rate going from 550-ish closer to 6? A couple things to consider on that. The dollar index has started to climb a little bit. So the dollar index is strengthening a little bit. The other thing is, coming into the end of the year, typically the Brazilian currency devalues towards the end of the year. Seasonally, you kind of have that devaluation. If for no other reason than the government steps back from higher interest just to push consumption a little bit for the end of the year. And their interest rates were at like 20%. So even if they just cut it back to say 15, or mid-teens, that could devalue the currency pretty significantly. So that's a factor. The reason I'm saying all this, and that was a little bit of a long explanation, but if basis is pressured when Brazilian harvest comes around, and if exchange rate were to go up, you could have farmers in Brazil be very willing sellers, even if the price in dollars is not that great. And even if they don't like the price, they might have to sell to pay off loans, to come up with cash at harvest. I am very cautious that when harvest time rolls around, there will be incredibly cheap soybeans out of Brazil. I think that there will be, my bias is we will see the exchange rate go up a little bit over the next few months. Maybe some farmers will sell into that. Many won't, especially if the price is pressured. And I just think we have a lot of selling pressure from farmers out of Brazil coming up ahead of us, and a lot of that probably at lower prices. So just hopefully the trade deal goes through and it's smooth and there's follow through. But there's this looming cloud of what is probably a very large South American crop that is undersold and probably going to come in at a very cheap price once their combines start rolling. And that's just something that I would absolutely make sure you keep that on your radar. Again, If you want help knowing how to translate some of this market information into decisions on your operation, reach out. Let's talk and see the best fit for your operation. Hope you have a great rest of your weekend. Lay out your plans for the upcoming week, and share this video and this email with anybody you think might like this type of content. Have a great weekend.